All right, let's get going now with the 30-second board, starting with that intrigue at the top. They are back. A lot of names coming off of injuries. That includes Eli Tomac, Jett Lawrence, Jorge Prado, Jason Anderson, Justin Barcia. It's a weird standard, JT, because Jett Lawrence has barely lost on a 450 outdoors ever. He's literally only lost one race. And then you talk about a legend like Eli Tomac. These are not guys that are expected, I would think, to ease back into it and take a 7th, a 5th, a 3rd the first couple rounds. I mean, I'm sure they want to be good from the start, right?
They will, for sure. And the question is, who's going to be the most prepared? Who is the most recovered? And make no mistake, for these riders, we're asking a lot of questions. Who's going to do what? Who's ready? Who's going to win? Who's better than who? They're asking the same questions of themselves. And I think that there's a misconception out there that fans, people like they think that the riders have all the answers. They know where they are. They don't. They're going to learn a lot on Saturday afternoon about where they stack up because they've been practicing, they've been putting all these laps in. Well, guess what? Until you get out there with the best of the best and you figure out where their level is, you truly don't know where you are. So we're going to learn alongside them. There's so many things that they're going to be trying to figure out about each other, and also coming back from injury for all these riders adds that extra wrinkle. They're not necessarily at 100%. It's how close to 100% are they at the opening round.
Yeah, but there is a strange other element to this. You live this life of the quick transition from Supercross to Motocross, and very rarely is anyone really ready for Motocross round one after Supercross, depending on the injury timeline. And Eli Tomac did an interview with Swap Moto Live last week and said this is the most preseason motocross riding he's ever done. Is there a chance that even one of those guys, or a few of them, are actually in a better spot than if they had been in a Supercross title fight right to the end?
I don't think so, because it's so impossibly difficult to replicate racing. The intensity, there's just a rust factor that happens. And, for a guy like Chase Sexton, who has been in the thick of racing, even though he's been racing Supercross, chasing, that championship, he's been practicing motocross for quite a while, and he has so much momentum. It's just going to be another Saturday. Yes, the discipline's different, but the racing is going to feel like just another race where all these other guys have to get back into the swing of it. So I think within a round or two, maybe back to 100%, but I still think there's some rust that everyone's going to have to burn off coming back from injury at round one.
Now at Sexton, we have to focus in on what has now become known as the Supercross hangover, which is normally reserved just for the Supercross champion, but Sexton was darn close. So he was focused on the prize as well. But mostly we think about Cooper Webb, who has said he is testing and does plan on racing Pro Motocross. The reason we even have to state that is because he's missed most summers. He very rarely does all the rounds. What kind of an impact should that tense title fight have on Webb, and maybe to a lesser degree, Sexton?
Well, I think you're going to see this parting of the seas as far as these two who were so close in the Supercross Championship are going to be complete opposite ends of the spectrum at round one this coming Saturday. Like, as far apart as you could ever imagine, because for one, Chase Sexton's a superior pro motocross racer in my mind than Cooper Webb. Second, this is not a track that really fits what Cooper Webb does very well. West Coast, high speed. But Sexton has been phenomenal at this racetrack. So there are so many factors as to why you're going to see a Supercross hangover in varying stages. For Webb, I expect to see a pretty heavy one. I think he'll be somewhere inside the top 10, but don't expect flashes at the front from him. Where Sexton's going in thinking he's going to win the opener. So these guys that went head to head for 17 rounds and it was decided by 2 points. I think the days of those two being 2 points apart are finished until we get to September.
And we have heard year after year, the rider who wins the Supercross title not quite able to get back up mentally for round one. Eli Tomac won both titles in 2022, but round one was not a good one for him, even in that season. Sexton wasn't very good in 2023 coming off that title. It'll be interesting, all these dynamics at once. But it isn't just about round one. That's the point you make. The tracks will change. We'll give you the schedule here for 2025. And what we love about SMX is that it keeps most of the traditions in place. There will be a series of playoff races and a world championship in September. But if you're the traditionalist, Pro Motocross, same places and mostly the same dates. The only big change in the schedule this year is that back half after the weekend off. Ironman's been the final round for a long time now. It's now 2 races from the end. because it will host Motocross Nations later. So it's just to spread out the national date from the Nations date. But JT, you raced a lot of these tracks on these weekends. That's how far back these traditions go.
Yeah, I mean, people plan their vacations and their whole schedule for the summer around some of these races. Like, this is what makes up their summer. So it'll be interesting to see kind of some of the changes. We know Ironman's moving. Budds Creek will be the finale. But for the most part, we have a very similar schedule to what we've seen in the past. You're going to get all sorts of different terrains, all sorts of different weather, different climates, different areas of the country. And that's what makes this championship so difficult to win, is everything gets thrown at you from across every gamut.
Okay, but for now, the focus will be on Fox Raceway at round one. JT, give us a tour of this track.
Well, they did make some changes for 2025. One of the bigger jumps was taken out, and you're going to see some different twists and turns, but the same basic Fox Raceway layout is going to be there. And I don't even think that's the biggest challenge. I think this dirt and the high speeds of this track are the most challenging, especially for riders born on the East Coast. It is a very, very California type racetrack. It's going to get very hard and very slippery late in the day, has some elevation change. So you wonder why guys like Christian Craig have done so well here in the past. It is California in a nutshell, this particular racetrack. So what we see at the opener may not be what we see at every round moving forward. You just always have to keep that in mind with this particular racetrack.
We have teased the silly season and who will go where for 2026 a few times on this show, but we're mostly talking about the rumors of Chase Sexton going to Kawasaki. And if he does, could Eli Tomac go to KTM? Because does Yamaha have room for Tomac to stay with Cooper Webb and Hayden Degan signing new deals, et cetera, et cetera? Let's take another angle on it. Who doesn't have a deal and an offer yet, JT, that's going to need Pro Motocross to give them some contract leverage?
Yeah, I think it's some of the guys that are coming back. Justin Barsha, Jason Anderson. We'll see what Malcolm Stewart does. All those guys will likely land somewhere, but the jockeying for position, who can get the best equipment, who can get, the highest salary within those budgets, that's where a great Pro Motocross season can really move the needle for them, because they're too talented to not have anything. But the range from having a deal that they're not necessarily happy with to getting an upper end of their range deal can be hundreds of thousands of dollars, and also the equipment difference can be vast. So just watch for that. Watch for riders to be incredibly motivated. If you see guys that come out swinging, they're probably in a contract year. It sounds like a myth, this contract year performance thing. It is a thing. Make no mistake about it.
And I'm going to give two names in the 250 class that I think are in a similar situation. I think Garrett Marchbank's return to Monster Pro Circuit Kawasaki is a one-year deal, so he's got to get something either with them or someone else for next year. He was good in Supercross, but not an absolute slam dunk. So I think he's fired up. And Joe Shimoda, we've heard, will he, won't he return to Honda? These are guys we know can podium and maybe win. They're going to need to. So watch them to be motivated for sure, especially in that 250 class, where all the hype we had at the beginning of this show, all the drama, the questions, that's all 450s. It sure seems like, JT, the 250s are a cut and dry story. Hayden Degan dominated last year. Any reason to think he doesn't again?
No, it's racing, and you don't want to assume anything, but make no mistake, Hayden is the favorite. He is the clear-cut favorite to defend this championship, and why wouldn't he be? He's won every championship the 250 class has to offer. He's two-time SMX world champion. He won this series last year. He finally checked that Monster Supercross box this year, and now he's going into the discipline where he excels. And, we talked so much in 2025 in January about Hayden should probably dominate Monster Energy Supercross. We didn't necessarily get that, even though it was a 32-point margin of victory. I do believe this summer we are going to get Hayden Degan domination. It doesn't mean he's going to go undefeated. It doesn't mean he's going to win every overall. I just think there will be moments where he's 30 seconds out front, and we're like, oh yeah, he's a lot better than everybody, which is kind of what we've expected for all of 2025, but now we're going to actually get it.
Yeah, the Degan story isn't so much the can he go 22-0 type dominance. You said this before. It's even when it seems like he's going to have a bad moto, mostly because he's so strong late in the races, even if he gets a bad start, a crash or whatever, he can overcome that and still grind out a podium. And that makes him so hard to beat for the title. Let's talk about some other 250 riders who we have seen run with Degan in individual motos or weekends, but haven't been able to do it minimizing the damage on the bad weekends. The first rider that comes to mind for me is Chance Hemis. And if you ask in the pits, you ask other riders, other teams, I think this is the guy they're afraid of if he gets on a roll. Literally, we heard last year, there were times where the Star Racing team were having other riders, not Degan, kind of mess with Hemis in practice to try to just slow his momentum. He's just an example of these guys whose talent and speed is off the charts. We just don't see it in all 22 motos.
Yeah, Hemis was on fire. You think about where he was going into Spring Creek of last year, that heroic effort he had going at Unadilla. We saw flashes of it. But I think for Monster Yamaha Star Racing, it's a moving target. Now, whether they lower the boom on Levi Kitchen, or it's Tom Bial, or Chance Hemis, or Seth Haymaker, whoever steps up and rises to the occasion and tries to get into this title fight, that conversation that you're talking about last summer will be had about that rider. You're going to see Hayden go at him on the podium. This is what they do. They have established this pattern of behavior. Nothing wrong with it. It's super competitive and it's working. It's working. They are delivering championships in the wake of that. And Hayden is finding ways to get into these riders' heads. He's forcing mistakes and he's coming out on top. So you can't really fault it, but it's going to be incredible to watch and see who steps up, who tries to get into the fight with Hayden on the racetrack, and how does Hayden respond, and can they withstand the immense pressure that comes along with that?
And there's another championship that did revive itself last year, but will now be integrated into Pro Motocross. So we're going to talk WMX here. That's the Women's Motocross Championship. Very easy to follow now. The first 3 and last 3 rounds of Pro Motocross will have WMX racing on Fridays. So it's a 6-round championship, and that means 3 in the West, 2 Californias, 1 Colorado, and then the Ironman, Unadilla, Budds Creek trio at the end. 6 races, 2 motos on Fridays. What's not to love here?
No, it's going to be great. And if you followed along with the Oceania Cup that happened earlier this year, you're going to recognize names like Charlie Cannon and KK Nielsen and Wella Turner. There's some serious talent that's going to be showing up on Fridays and racing these events. So I think it's amazing and awesome that they're back. And also the young talent that is kind of converging at the same time for this return is going to make it a lot of fun.
And we mentioned the last 3 rounds because the schedule flipped. We talked about earlier with Ironman not being the finale to set the stage for Motocross Nations returning to the United States.
Yeah, it's incredible that we sit here in May. We haven't started Pro Motocross, and I have so many people asking me at the races, emailing me about Motocross Nations, and they just want a bench race. It's not a targeted question. It's not about, hey, where should I watch from? It's, what do you think is going to happen? Who's going to pick who? Who's going to win? I'm like, I don't know. I'm it's flabbergasted as they are, but that's what makes this race so entertaining, is that we can talk about it on this show in May, and people want to hear about it because it's really hard to argue that it's the event of the year, especially when it's in the USA. You know, it's becoming more of a norm. We didn't have one here for 11 years after 2007 Budds Creek, but we're getting them every few years now, and it's really ramping up the excitement. And I think we're going to get the best possible riders we can get for Team USA, which makes it that much more fun. So if you haven't bought your ticket yet, do it. I don't know that anybody's ever been to this race and said, you know what, wish I hadn't gone to that. It's a home run every single time.
And another one with SMX Next. This is what we used to refer to as the Moto Scouting Combines. It's now SMX Next Motocross. And we've already seen the fruits of that. Alexander Fedortsov is moving pro. He wins the SMX Next Supercross title in Pittsburgh, JT. He's moving up to pro. I've watched him ride motocross during the week. The speed is scary. Like, I don't know where they found this dude, but he is unreal. He didn't even ride a bike for a couple years when he was younger. He hammers down. He rides Saturdays and Sundays. He rides 7 days a week. But he's going pro. So that leaves the door open here for SMX Next.
Yeah, I think there are a lot of young riders that would love to take up the mantle there. And you think about Enzo Timmerman and Landon Gordon and all these kids that we're becoming more and more familiar with. They're becoming superstars in their own right. Well, we're going to take it outside now. We're going to learn who has the speed for Pro Motocross, because I think we started to game out what it looked like in Monster Energy Supercross. This is going to be a totally different thing. And you know, we've had an opportunity to talk to these riders on Fridays at these races, and Supercross is still a new thing. you know, they spent their entire life riding motocross. They're going to be much more familiar, much more comfortable. So I'm curious to see who can really take advantage of that and who shows up at an SMX Next race that is a Pro Motocross race versus what we've seen for the calendar year of 2025 thus far.
And here is when they will show up and where. There will be 3 of these events, SMX Next Motocross. Hangtown now on the schedule for that for the first time ever. And then Redbud and Ironman again. And you really want to watch these, which will also take place on Friday, just like WMX. I remember well Redbud, feels like 10 years ago. I think it was only 4. That was really Hayden Degan's debut on a 250F with Monster Energy Yamaha Star Racing. He had been good as an amateur on mini bikes, but all of a sudden he jumped like 10 levels all of a sudden when he was on a Star Racing bike. And that's when I think most people said, oh, this is for real. So you want to be there when that moment happens, and it could happen as early as the Friday of Hangtown. We told you when it takes place. Every weekend, Pro Motocross, the gates drop at 1 o'clock Saturday afternoon local time. So that means the gates drop at 4 Eastern from Fox Raceway, round 1. We're going to be on the air a half hour before that with a pre-race show to hype this up even more. So make that 3:30 Eastern. Tune us in then. And qualifying coverage, race day live, 10 o'clock local. That's 1 o'clock Eastern. Kicks it all off. So join us at 1 Eastern.
Hi folks, Lee Diffie from NBC Sports here. If you truly enjoyed what you just watched, you can get more news, interviews, and highlights by subscribing to the Motorsports on NBC YouTube page. You can get it all, so go for it.